Sunday, March 1st, 2020. I am Mark Churchill. I'm a full time teacher of English, world languages, coding, philosophy. Teach a few other things too in the past. Been teaching for something in between 25 and 30 years. I was part time for a period there. My typical routine during the school year, 10 months of the year, 9 months of the year, is I have to be to school at 7:30, so I rise at 6:30. I'm out of the house at 7. Eat my breakfast on the way to work. Get out of school at 3 o'clock. Usually home between 3:30 and 4. Typically go for a walk somewhere in town. This is a semi-rural area. It's right on the coast of Maine. Lots of trails, lots of hills, very near Mount Desert Isle. So I go out there sometimes. Typically walk about at least 30 minutes, seldom more than an hour. If I walk more than an hour, especially if I'm going up a hill or a small mountain, I'm going to have an aching hip and some referent pain. I try not to take analgesics, so I avoid anything I know is going to give me that kind of pain. He was still running, and I ran most of my life. Might have been probably the source of part of the problem with my hip. I stopped running about 5 years ago. Since I stopped running, actually, less pain. And I've modified my exercise routine. Mostly, I do things around stretching, keeping my body limber. I find the more that I do, the better my hip feels. Um, I try to keep my diet mostly vegetables and all the kinds of things that one would eat to maintain musculoskeletal health. I used to play all sorts of sports, don't play much anymore, maybe tennis in the summer. Um, I'm applying for a service dog for two main reasons. Um, I've known about the hip problem for over 10 years, almost 15 years now. It just progressively has gotten worse. I've been seeing the same orthopedic surgeon for the last 5 years around here. And he estimates I'd probably need hip replacement surgery sometime over the next 5 years or so, depending on my activity and further degeneration. I want to put it off as long as possible. Um, there's going to be a recovery period with that, and I don't know how my mobility will be after that. I hear some people do quite well, some people not so well. The main reason why I want a service dog, it has to, is because I've had um, anxiety regarding living alone the past 4 to 5 years. I've had dogs most of my life. My last dog died 6 years ago, but at that point I was living in a dormitory with 30 Chinese kids, so I wasn't lonely then. Um, but I moved in my present residence about 5 years ago, and started to just notice the difference. So really the first time in my life living alone. I have a granddaughter, 9-year-old granddaughter, who comes over at least one day a week, usually on the weekend, stays overnight. Sometimes she stays with me during the week. My ex-wife and I take care of her. My daughter was unable to. My ex-wife adopted her. I share all the expenses of raising her gladly. I really like her and look forward to her companionship when she comes over. Um, I have a number of friends that I see, but I don't usually socialize in my house. I go to coffee shops and restaurants and all the kind of things, activities that somebody of my age, 62, would do. Um, about a year or two ago, I started to arise 3 to 5 times a night relative to prostate issues typical of men of my vintage. Um, I started taking medication about a year ago that slightly improved that. But I still get up at least 3 times a night, and usually more like five, sometimes as many as 7 times a night. Um, that started to disrupt my sleep, of course. But about last summer, I started to develop more of an anxiety about sleep. I think it was just initiated by um, waking so often, but it's become worse than that. It's become almost a sleep phobia. And so I started to change my routine, go to bed earlier, no television or screen, hour to 2 hours before I go to sleep, CBD, a number of other herbal sleep um, treatments, melatonin, etc., etc. With all the herbal treatments. The anxiety got worse as the school year progressed last fall, to the point by December, um, it was a day-to-day combat trying to get to sleep and stay asleep. By Christmas, I was ready to retire because I couldn't function anymore. I was getting, if I was lucky, 3 hours a night, some nights no sleep. I had to call in ill a number of times, so by Christmas, I indicated to the principal that I may have to retire in January. During the Christmas break, I slept a little better. Again, not to, the stress of having to get up, so I might have to stay in bed 10 hours to get 6 hours of sleep, but at least I was getting 6 hours of sleep. When I returned to school after Christmas break, I was right back where I was in December. And then I was at crisis point to this extent I just couldn't sleep. I was ready to be hospitalized because there was nothing I could do to get to sleep. Doctor prescribed a couple of different sleep aids. One of them um, works in the sense that, yes, it does drug me to sleep, although several times Um, I've even resisted that and just stayed up in a kind of a hypnotic state for 8 hours. But I don't like the drug. It's toxic. It's only supposed to be used. It's Lunestra. Um, it's only supposed to be used about 6 months. I take the middle dose, which is 2 milligrams. It leaves me with a headache all the time, tinnitus, um, slight loss of balance, although I'm falling with it, but I just noticed that I suddenly feel, momentarily almost vertiginous. Um, don't want to stay on it. I want to get off it as soon as possible. It's not a good drug. Um, so uh, I'm I know that a dog will help me with loneliness. I'm hoping that that'll also help me with my sleep anxiety. At my school, the principal has a service dog, Jake, who visits me several times a day. There's a wave of calm that comes over me when that dog comes into the room. Um, if I did have a service dog, our school allows service dogs to be in the school, so I could bring the dog to school with me. Um, I wanted to work until I was 65, which would be the rest of this year and 2 more years. Um, but I may have to retire at the end of this year. Um, if a dog did not improve my condition, or if I can't find some way to get out of this loop that I'm in. But I would hope that my condition would improve such that by summer with a break, I would give it another try next year and be able to bring the dog to school with me. If I have to retire, I would still have to work. I do have another useful skill as a clinical lab scientist. There are ample opportunity for part-time jobs around here. It's a job I could do largely sitting down. So that would be my plan if I can't continue teaching. But I think that's all the information you needed about my daily routine and activities. So let me do a tour of my house inside, and then I'll go outside and show the grounds. So I guess actually I'm gonna have to stop and reverse it, and I'll pick it up from there.